What's up guys, JV2017 here, and I am bringing you a new Fallout 4 tips and tricks video. And this time I thought it'd be nice to talk about drugs, because they're quite useful and probably overlooked by most players. Just a quick reminder guys, this is your hub for daily Fallout 4 content here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned on my channel for daily Fallout 4 tips and tricks videos. Today I'm going to share my ultimate guide for chems, or drugs, in this game. So we'll talk about what chems are and how they are useful, specific drugs and their effects, and then finally the consequences for using chems and how to handle them. So I hope this is useful for newer players who don't really know what to do with drugs, and also a helpful reminder for some of you Vault veterans. First, let's start out with a basic definition for what chems are within Fallout. So they are consumable items similarly to food or water or whatever, and they provide a temporary stat boost that enhances a specific skill for the player. So some things will enhance a certain skill, like a special stat, or some kind of damage, or they will alter the world around you. So we'll talk about some specific examples here in just a second. And also, when you do take chems, you run the risk of getting addicted, and then with addiction comes withdrawal symptoms when you're not taking the drug. So just like in real life, if you get addicted to something and then you stop taking that, you will suffer some withdrawal symptoms. Your stats will go down instead of go up. However, if you keep up that addiction and keep taking it, you won't have those withdrawal symptoms. You're just attached to that drug. So when you run out, you are going to feel the effects of withdrawal. And we'll go more into detail on that in just a little bit here. But something else to realize in general about chems is that some will last a very long time, and some are very, very short kind of burst temporary boosts. So some will last you 8 minutes, which is a very long time. That's going to be more like your special stat boosts, and others will just last 15 seconds. So that's just a temporary boost. Maybe it's damage, maybe it's slowing down time, things that affect the world around you. Those will last a lot shorter. While you can find plenty of chems just waiting for you out in the Commonwealth, you can actually craft them by using the chemistry station. And there's one in Sanctuary. It's kind of hidden, but it's, you've got access to a chemistry station very early in the game, so you can start making your own chems. And with the chemistry station, the player is able to craft most of the chems that you can find out in the world, not all of them, with certain materials that you will find out in the world. So if you visit a chemistry station, you're going to find the materials that you need to make each specific chem. So the nice thing about creating, your own chems is that it's a great source of experience, even if you don't plan on using your chems. Obviously, if you're running like a chem-based character with certain perks, which is something we'll talk about later, then obviously it makes a ton of sense to just make all these chems and then use them constantly. But if you don't have those chem-based perks, you really do have to watch out for addiction, like I talked about before. So you'll find a nice variety of chems that you can craft yourself under the drugs tab at the chemistry station. And it's interesting, in this game they decided to combine some of the different drugs together. So for example, there's not just Psycho and Jet. If you don't know what those are, don't worry, I'll talk about them in a second. There's Psycho Jet. You can combine them together for, combination of effects, which is pretty cool. You could also do Buff Jet, for example. So it's kind of nice. You can blend these things together for a combination of effects that can be really, really helpful in combat. Now let's look at a list of the most common primary chems that you're going to find out in the world, or that you can craft yourself at the chemistry station. So these are the things that are most abundant, that you'll probably find the most usage out of, just because they're the most common. So first is Buff Out, and this increases your strength and endurance, your special stats, by 2, and your maximum HP by 50 for 5 minutes. So it doesn't last 8 minutes, but it does last a lot longer than some of the short burst chems that you will take. So this is really an oh shit drug for me. This is kind of like, I'm panicking, I need to take this because I'm about to die. That's how I use Buff Out. And also when I need to carry some extra things, if I don't have any, food that will enhance my carrying weight, the extra strength will help you out there as well. Next is Jet, which actually changed from previous games. It used to give you some extra action points. Now it just slows down time for 10 seconds. So this is a very short duration chem. It's not like Buff Out. It's only going to slow down time for 10 seconds. So it's a quick burst kind of thing. Kind of like, I would use this also in certain situations. Maybe you're surrounded by enemies and you really just need to take them down quickly. Jet is useful there. Med-X is a drug that provides plus 25 damage resistance to your player for 5 minutes. So this is kind kind of a damage mitigation thing. If you're going into an area where you can tell you're going to take a lot of damage, this will definitely help you out for mitigating some of the damage that you'll be taking, and it lasts 5 minutes, so it's kind of nice. If you need to clear an area out of enemies, Med-X is definitely useful in those situations. Next is Overdrive, which lasts for 8 minutes, one of the longer lasting drugs, and it gives you plus 25% critical chance and plus 25% damage. So Overdrive is definitely one of those things that, boosts your damage by a big amount, and it's just damage across the board. It doesn't matter what kind of character you are, you're going to benefit from Overdrive in combat situations, especially with the critical chance. So I suppose if you're running a luck-based character, Overdrive is just insanely good in that sense. This is the most overtly offensive drug that we're going to talk about today with the primary chems that you can find out in the world. Overdrive is very, very strong. Our last most common drug is Psycho, and this will give you plus 25% damage just like Overdrive, but also plus 25% damage resistance. So if you were to put Overdrive and Psycho side by side, the difference is that Psycho only lasts for 5 minutes, not 8, so Overdrive lasts longer. Also, Overdrive gives you that crit chance while Psycho gives you the damage resistance. So I think it's just, your choice between those two. I wouldn't say one is, better than another one. Psycho does give you a little bit more, survivability with that damage resistance, while Overdrive will put enemies down quicker with the critical chance, depending on your character. So I would really say, pick your poison between those two. Since we are talking about taking all of these drugs, we do need to talk about addiction, because that's something that is in the game and can happen. So most of the chems that you will take will have around a 15% addiction chance. There are some special scenarios where they are lower or higher. For example, Buff Out is only a 10% chance for addiction. So if you take that, you'll have a lower chance. However, Excel, which is something I didn't talk about, which is something new you can find out in the game, which boosts every single stat by 2, which is interesting, has a 35% chance of getting you addicted. So something to note is that the addiction chance, I believe it just recalculates every time you take it. So for example, if you just rapid fire 5 Buff Outs one after another, I don't think it builds on top of that chance to get addicted. I think it just recalculates the 10% every single time. It's kind of hard to explain, but I hope that was a clear enough explanation. So obviously, once you are addicted, you will have those withdrawal symptoms until you are cured. We're about to talk about curing your addiction, but those symptoms will give you lowered stats. Specifically, it depends on which drug you're taking. You have to go to your stats screen on your Pip-Boy and then click the certain button to show effects, which will be at the bottom of the screen, and it'll show you what your withdrawal symptoms are. So for example, Buff Out will give you -1 strength and -1 endurance. So it really has to do with what specific drug you are taking. Now let's talk about curing that addiction. So once you are addicted, this is something you absolutely have to deal with unless you have an unlimited supply of that drug. You may have a lot of materials, but you are eventually going to run out. So it's nice to be able to cure this addiction. So what you can do, a few things you can do, are visit a doctor. So for example, there's Dr. Soon or Sun, who's in Diamond City just to the right once you enter in the market area. He will be there and he will cure your addiction for just 75 caps. It's just dirt cheap, for him to cure your addiction. Additionally, you can take 2 different items, the refreshing beverage, which you can actually craft at the chemistry station under the healing tab. It does have kind of some large requirements, some materials. You need stim packs, for example, which is kind of annoying. You got to use those stim packs for the refreshing beverage, but it's overall a very good item. So I would look into that if I were you at the chemistry station. Or you could take a Dick-Doll, which is something you can find out in the world, or you can buy it. It's quite expensive though, and all it does is, cure your addiction. So that is pretty much the primary, function of that item is to cure your addictions. The refreshing beverage cures your addictions and gives you a bunch of health and does other things. So really it's between those 2 items if you want to cure your addiction or visit a doctor. I have read that some people are claiming that you can actually just wait for your addiction to go away and kind of quit it cold turkey like in real life. However, I totally did that. I took Buff Out and then slept for an entire week, so 7 days of in-game time, and my addiction did not go away. So I do not believe that waiting gets rid of your addiction. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I tested it and it just didn't work out for me. So it's much easier to just visit a doctor for 75 caps and get rid of your addiction that way. Finally, if you want to avoid addiction or even take advantage of the effects that drugs can give you, there are some chem-based perks that will help you out in that respect. So first there's Chem Resistant, which requires Endurance 4. There are only 2 ranks of this perk, and the first one reduces your chance of being addicted by 50%, and then the next one actually reduces any chance of getting your addiction. It just cancels it. You can't get addicted to drugs. So you can just go crazy at level 22 and just take all the drugs and take advantage of a multitude of effects. And honestly, you probably won't need a ton of drugs if you're playing on normal, but on survival, this is a really good perk at just endurance 4. So you really don't have to invest that many points into endurance to get to chem resistant. On the other hand, there's also Chemist, which is at Intelligence 7, which is more of an investment to get to this one. This will increase the actual duration of your chems by a ton. At the highest rank, it's 200%, which is 3 times, which is, if you think about it, if you're taking Mentats or something that has an 8-minute duration, this increases it to 24 minutes. That's absolutely insane. Also, for, Jet, for example, which is only 10 seconds length, that will increase to 30 seconds, which is just so much longer. If you're in slow motion for 30 seconds, that's a very, very long time. So the point is, these perks are very, very powerful, but you actually have to use chems and use them often for them to be worth your time. Here are a few additional things to know about chems before we wrap up the video. My best advice is to find the chems that you really like and use them effectively in combat in moderation. Obviously, if you're going to take the chem perks, then you don't need to worry about moderation at all. You can just go crazy. But if you're not going to invest the points, chems are just very useful, and they're just going to sit in your inventory if you ignore them. So my best piece of advice is to always think about chems in the back of your mind when you're struggling in combat, especially on survival mode. Also, keep in mind which companion you have with you, because some companions will either really like or really dislike the fact that you're taking drugs and getting addicted. So if you're trying to increase affinity, this could either negatively or positively affect, your pursuit for a companion perk. So really just keep that in the back of your mind when you are taking chems. After watching this video, I'd like to know, will you use chems in combat now? Is this something you kind of have in the back of your mind like I mentioned before? And will you go after those chem perks? Honestly, looking at those chem perks and looking at, the wide variety of drugs that you can take out in the Commonwealth, these are very strong perks, especially on survival mode. So let me know what you guys think about drugs and chems in Fallout. Share all of that below. Alright guys, today I shared everything you need to know about chems in Fallout 4, and next time we will cover more Fallout on my channel, so stay tuned for daily Fallout 4 tips and tricks videos, and remember that this is your hub for Fallout 4 content on YouTube. If you learned something new, remember to hit that like button, I would really appreciate it, and don't forget to subscribe for more unique weapon guides, build guides, and general tips and tricks videos. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.